Right, okay, folks, welcome to the latest episode of the Nice and Nasty. Now, I've got an absolutely fantastic guest on tonight. Yeah, well, I don't know why I'm trying to pretend, give you some clues. You can see the title. It's the wonderful Dan Wood. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. How are you doing? A couple of days
Uh,
before Christmas, hopefully not too
yeah,
manic.
I'm not bad. I'm not bad. Yeah, have you got all your Christmas presents bought, or are you Amazon voucher person like me?
Yeah, well, I think normally I leave it even too late to do the Amazon thing. I think I'm usually there with the rest of the last minute blokes on Christmas Eve at around 4 p.m., kind of grabbing whatever's left on the shelves. That's normally more my style, if I'm honest.
That's what 24-hour garages are for, mate.
Exactly, yeah. The
Yeah,
flowers are always
yeah.
nice in there, aren't they?
So listen, mate. Thanks very much for taking time out to join me. I know you're a busy man. Obviously, you're a family man. You've got your retro podcast. You've got a full-time job as well. So
Yep.
thanks for joining you. I mean, I've been aware of you for that sounds wrong, but I don't know, for quite a long time. I mean, I think since I sort of, I mean, I've been into like my retro gaming. Well, it's never left me. I mean, I
Yeah.
started playing video games in 1983, and I've just never grown out of it. So it's not something that I've discovered retro. Um, it's never left me. I think, like most people, and I know you guys have alluded to it on the Retro podcast, back in the sort of like 80s, 90s, it wasn't a question of, I'll have an Amiga and I'll buy a SNES, I'll buy a Mega Drive. No, it didn't work like that. You had to sell what you had to then buy something else. If
Yep.
you didn't like that, you had to then sell that. At least it was for me. So it was only until I got a bit older and I kind of got a decent job that you were able to kind of own multiple systems. But up until then, it was just, you had your Commodore 64. You didn't. I mean, I don't think I knew anyone that had two home computers. That was like unheard of.
No, it was insane, wasn't it, back then? It's you think of, you know what you mentioned then about throwing the systems out, and that's kind of one thing I've really regretted over the years because I did kind of get out of gaming for a few years,
Yeah.
and I'm a bit ashamed to admit it. I threw stuff like an Amiga 1200 in the bin, and Mega Drive I threw out as well, a Commodore Plus 4. Yeah,
You
there's so many machines that
actually
if I knew
put
what they were worth on eBay today,
you quite literally put them into the bucket.
yeah. I was moving house, didn't have room. I thought, that I've already filled up a
Unbelievable.
van. Yeah, girlfriend I was with at the time. So what are you carrying around all this crap for? So I was like, oh yeah, I'm never going to use it again. Little did I know.
This is the thing when you see. I mean, you just have to look at the internet, and prices for retro stuff is kind of going through the roof. And I mean, I saw somebody was advertising the complete set of Zap 64 magazines, and
Mm,
people are saying, oh, they're worth about £1,000 in that. And I was the same as you. I had a Commodore 64, I had a disk drive, I had everything for it. I had a full set of Zaps, and I think I sold them for like 50 quid.
wow.
And people are like, why would you be so stupid? But to go back to, I don't know when it'd be, 1987, whatever it was, I was wanting to get an Atari ST, and I wasn't interested in a Commodore 64. That was old fashioned. That was old tech. I wanted the latest thing.
Yeah, I'm never
So
going to
it's
play that again. You were thinking, yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly, and it's easy with the best will in the world, and hindsight to say, I wish I'd kept that. I mean, we all say that. I wish I'd kept my Action Man. I wish I hadn't, because I was quite a destructive child. My mum would buy me. I mean, I had like the $6 Million Man and Evil Knievel and all that
Oh
kind of
wow.
stuff. And when I got bored, I used to break toys, and then my mum would just put them in the bucket. And you look at eBay now, it's like Evil Knievel going for like 100 quid. It's mental.
Oh, we had all the real Ghostbusters toys were like the thing that we were really into.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, we had all of that, the Kenner action figures they brought out for that. And we had like the Fire Station and Ecto 1 and all the various spin offs. I think they released about like 5 or 6 different variants of all the Ghostbusters, with different outfits on and different
yeah.
features the figures could do. I must have had a few hundred of them at one stage. And then as soon as I got to about 13 or 14, my mother's like, oh, you're a teenager now, this is baby stuff. Threw them all in the bin. So I showed her a couple of years ago what they're worth on eBay now. So that was your retirement plan. You messed that up. So.
You're not going to that fancy home, mum. You're going to the one down the road.
That is it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's mental. It's easy for people to say, oh, why didn't I do this? Why? And I don't know if you're like that, Dan. I'm now I'm now that age where when I get an Amazon delivery, I immediately go to put the box in the bucket, and I think, oh, that's a good box. I think I'll keep
Yep.
that. And you retain boxes. And my daughter, I mean, it doesn't matter what I buy. I keep the box. And I think even like with kind of gaming stuff, I hang on to the box. And the reason I hang on to the box is because if you sell something on eBay unboxed, you'll get 50 quid. If you sell it boxed, you'll get 150 quid. So we're now sort of in this mindset where don't throw a box out. And I say that to my daughter. My daughter loves, she's right into her sort of anime and cosplay, and she's got all these lots of figures. And I've got a cupboard upstairs, and it's just rammed with boxes, and it's ridiculous because we will never ever say, right, we're going to sell these. I don't know. Are you like that? Do you always hang on to good boxes?
I do, yeah. And the thing is now, because I wonder, you made a good point there about whether it'll be the same in like 20, 30 years. Whether, for example, a boxed PlayStation 5 will kind of be worth, like now what a boxed like Amiga 500 is, for example, on eBay. Because you think they make so many more now, don't they? I think they might have made like 1 million, maybe 1.5 million Amiga 500s. I think they've sold about like 50 million PlayStation 5s. So there's so much more of them out there now, isn't there? And I think, like you said then, people are more aware now of like saving stuff like boxes and packages. But I'm the same. I mean, my loft is full of it. I've actually got a shed I had to build last year because the loft's kind of getting full of crap now. So I've got like a crap add-on unit now as well. So store stuff like that.
So are you, I mean, when did you kind of first start kind of collecting, sort of gathering retro kind of consoles and classic machines?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously, originally when I was a kid, I got my it was a Commodore Plus 4 that I got in 1987. I know you've covered some Plus 4 stuff before, haven't you?
Commiserations, commiserations. Yeah, I mean that is tantamount to child abuse, I have to say.
Yeah. Well, I think the only reason I got that is because I've since learned, because we got that, it was Christmas '87. We got that machine, and I think Commodore discontinued it about 2 years earlier. It wasn't on the market for very long, and they were doing like a fire sale where I've got a feeling my mother got the Plus 4 with 15 games for 99 quid, and then she had to word to the salesman who basically threw in another 15 games for about an extra 20 quid or something. So we got a load of games with it, but it was like, bargain basement kind of stuff. Yeah.
You quite literally got the entire back catalogue of Plus 4 games. Yeah. That's a funny thing because parents, they didn't buy what was the best computer. They bought what they thought, this is a good one. Oh, the Commodore Plus 4. When did that come out? 1987. Oh, that Commodore 64 came out 2 years. I'll get them the better one.
Exactly,
I'll get them the more modern one. And it's like when my mum and dad, I eventually convinced them to get me a computer. And it was, I wanted the Commodore 64, but it was too expensive. So I said, can you maybe get a Spectrum? So they went to Comet. Do you remember Comet?
Yes.
One of the big, I think it's sadly gone. They went to Comet and they said, well, you're not coming because it's a surprise. And when I opened, I think it was for my birthday, I opened my computer and it was a Texas TI 994A.
It was a surprise, yeah.
And my heart actually died. Part of me died that day. However, in the intervening 40 years, I've actually realised the Texas was actually a really good machine. I've got a Mister, I've got the Texas Core, and there's some fantastic games out for it. But back in 1983, the only game I had for it was it was a type-in, but I bought it. I think I bought it off Computer and Video Games. It was like $4.99, and you had to defuse a neutron bomb. You controlled your rocket, which was a letter V, and you had to avoid killer seagulls, which were letter W's. And I think the bomb was like an asterisk. I mean, you had
to really use your imagination on that game, did you?
And then my mate was at Reading College, and he came up for Christmas, and he was doing IT, or it wasn't called IT, it was just called computer studies. And he programmed about 25% of a Defender clone for it. The only thing he did was he got the ship moving up and down, and it had, when you fire in Defender, it's got that kind of, it's like a line, and it kind of breaks up. He had that to perfection. And after he left, it was either plain core or loading up this demo of a ship that I could fire. And I used to play that more. It wasn't even a game. It was just like, this is about the best it's going to get. So that was short-lived, and eventually got a part-time job and got a Commodore 64, and the rest, as I say, is history. So you got a Plus 4. When did you start kind of building up other stuff?
Well, so Plus 4 was weirdly at my school. I've got a feeling there must have been I think it was Lasky's my parents got it from, and I've got a feeling that a few other parents were kind of coerced into a certain salesman for buying them that year, because actually a few of my friends at school the same year got +4s. So I did have a couple of mates I could actually swap games with. A lot of them quickly moved on to 64s, maybe like the year after. I've got a vivid memory of walking into a local computer shop, and it kind of be like doing a drug deal, asking for Commodore +4 games. You'd say to the guy behind the counter, "Have you got any +4 games, mate?" You're like, "Oh, let me check under the counter for you." You go at the back, and there'd be like a dusty box. You'd like, dust off the dirt on it. Then you're like, "Any of these any good?" And you buy them for a couple of quid. And then one day I went in, and this must have been around 1990. I still had my +4 then. And the guy in the shop said, "Mate, we haven't got any. Just throw your computer away. It's shit." So I was like, I remember that breaking my heart. And then I said to my mum, I was like, "Look, a lot of the other kids at school have got Commodore 64s. Any chance I could have a Commodore 64?" And then that was a run up. It was actually Christmas '91 that I was expecting to get one. And my mother actually, she's kind of a bit of a professional troll at this, really. She really wound me up that I was getting a Commodore 64 for Christmas that year. Really had this feeling that I was. And she goes, "If you were to get a 64 of Santa, is there any games you'd want with it? Any peripherals and stuff?" So I circled them all in the Argos catalogue and stuff like that. And then I remember clear as day, it had been Christmas Eve 1991. Saying to my mum, she was going into town that day. I said, "Well, since Santa's probably bringing me a Commodore 64 tomorrow, any chance I can come to town with you and maybe just get a few games ready for it?" And she went, "Son, I'm really sorry you're not getting a Commodore 64 for Christmas this year." I remember my heart breaking. But then next morning, I unwrapped an Amiga 500.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, that was a masterpiece of a trolling that was off my mother.
Awesome. So you went from a +4 to an Amiga.
Yeah, it's quite a jump.
Yeah. Have you played Green Beret on the
Yes.
C6? I've played a lot of games in my time, and I have to say it's probably the worst game ever.
Yeah.
I mean, people like Ashens and all these guys, they'll do the worst games ever, and they'll do things like typing games. This game, Green Beret, was released by Imagine Software. Well, it was the Ocean version, I imagine. They released it for £9.99, so it was a full price game, and it is unbelievable. It's hilarious. Have you played it recently?
I actually saw a YouTube video on it probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and I downloaded it then to try it out. And yeah, they weren't exaggerating how awful it is. It was. I can't believe they sold that as a game.
It's the title. The title screen says "Stab to Start." That's the title screen. Stab to start, and it's hilarious. I mean, when he gets to the edge of the screen, everything stops and it goes and it kind of shudders to the side, and then it all kicks in again. And you can literally play 5 games in the space of 30 seconds, and you have got no idea why you've actually died. It's fantastically bad. Was that one of the bundled games that you got?
No, luckily I didn't get that one. Quite fortunately, I did get. Do you remember Paperboy on the Commodore 16/+4? That was a dreadful version of it as well.
I think I have played that. I did an Arcade Perfect My Arse a few years back. Yeah.
Yeah, so luckily, I mean, I did get Paperboy with it, and I was familiar with that from the arcade. So I loaded that up, and I was like, "This ain't Paperboy. What the hell's this?" Luckily, there were. I mean, I did a YouTube video a few years ago. It was kind of the top 10 Commodore +4 games, because even though the +4 has got probably I think a justifiably bad reputation, because like you said, Commodore released that as kind of the follow up to the Commodore 64, and they're trying to sell it as a gaming system with the bundle games and stuff. Nowhere near as good as the 64, obviously, but there were some standout titles on the +4 that held my interest as a kid.
Yeah, I know Sean Southern, who he's been on my channel quite a few times. He's largely touted as the kind of guru of the C16. Some of the games that he put out, I mean, there's a version of Kickstart which is kind of different from the C64. Brilliant game called is it Proof of Destruction Pod?
Yes,
I don't know if you've played that.
I'm familiar with it.
It's on the Commodore 64 and it's on the +4 oblique C16, and I would say the C16 +4 one is even better, because I think did it have more colours or something, but I think it wasn't as, it didn't have a SID chip. No, it didn't.
No, it was basically so all the graphics and the audio and the IO was all taken care of by one chip called the TED chip. So yeah, it didn't have a SID, it didn't have hardware sprites, nothing like that. It was actually, I'd say in terms of hardware, it was probably more similar to something like a Spectrum. You often got like color clash in games. So it
Hmm.
was definitely more on par with like the Spectrum than the C64. But I mean, you're right, Sean Southern, who you were kind enough to hook me up with Sean a few years ago.
That's right. Aye, aye.
Yeah, which eternally grateful for, because Sean was one of my gaming heroes as a kid, and that version of Kickstart, that was one of the games I got with my Plus 4,
Yep.
and like you said, completely different to any other version of it. And I know there was like a homebrew, like a fan conversion of the Plus 4 version of Kickstart to the 64 a couple of
Hmm.
years ago, because it is
Oh, right. Okay.
it's a version that a lot of people love. But yeah, Sean could make that hardware sing. I remember there's a game called Tutti Frutti that he did that was really good, and obviously Trailblazer, the original version of that, I think, was on the 16
Yep.
slash plus
Yep.
four. So yeah, he was like, if I saw his name on a game, I knew it was going to be a good one.
You knew, and that's the thing. It's interesting. You don't get that now. You don't buy Call of Duty because it's got Joe Blogs wrote it,
No,
because
yeah,
obviously it's thousands of people. But back then, when you saw a name, you say Sean Southern, Jeff Minter, you knew, apart from Mama Llama, which was complete garbage. uh, but yeah, people put their names to it, and that was interesting. I mean, I've spoke to Kevin Toms. Have you had Kevin on the retro?
yeah, a few
Yeah.
years ago, yeah, and I've been to a few events with Kevin as well. He's like a lovely guy as well,
He
isn't
is.
he?
He
Yeah,
is. He's a lovely guy. And I said, why? What prompted your face? Because you were like
yeah,
the most well-known, the beard, the floating head, and he just said, I just thought that people should sort of be aware of who programs games, and it will maybe
yeah.
make people buy them. And yeah, I mean, everybody from a certain age can remember Football Manager with the floating beard.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's because you're right. I mean, I think games programmers, particularly back then when it was, it was generally one guy could make them in his room and
Yeah.
just kind of send a tape into a company. And a lot of them were, very young people. And, we've heard the stories about how some of the big software companies kind of took advantage of them a little bit, might have paid them like, a few £100 to do like a game at home that they then make a massive profit off.
Hmm.
And generally they're quite anonymous unless they did put their name, the ones who were clever enough, like Sean Southern,
Yeah,
he'd always have his
that's right.
name under the title, and it was the only way that they could get some recognition, I guess, back then.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, mental. But so you obviously you went from the Plus 4 to the Amiga. I know that obviously the Amiga is that your favourite computer, home computer? Would you say?
Yeah, still to this day. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I had it was a Commodore 500 Plus pack I had, the Cartoon Classics pack, that came with it was Bart versus the Space Mutants.
Oh, yep, yep.
Yeah, which I know is generally not a very well regarded game in terms of the Simpsons games that came out. Obviously the arcade's kind of the one that most people go to, or something like Hit and Run. But for me, I think because I'd come from the Plus 4 with its very rudimentary graphics, there was actually I don't know if you've ever played the Amiga version of Bart versus the Space Mutants. Disc one's got like an animation on it. So you put it in and it looks like a cartoon. I mean, admittedly, a very slow moving cartoon, 'cause it's got to load all the samples and everything off a floppy disk. But to me, when I put that in my machine and I saw Bart Simpson appear on my telly and suddenly start talking, I was like, fuck. Like, it was completely, didn't feel like jumping one generation, felt like jumping about 5 generations
Yeah,
from
yeah.
my Plus 4. So absolutely floored me when I loaded that. And obviously, this was 1991. Every, 10-year-old kid back then, Bart Simpson was like the coolest kid in the world, wasn't he?
It's interesting you're talking about the jump. I mean, I went from Binatone Pong, which was complete gash. Um, Even then, I thought this was boring because it was like one player. But yeah, I got my Commodore 64, and then I went to the Atari ST. And although my heart sunk when I heard the sound, it was like a backward step. The SID chip just blew the Atari ST away.
Yeah.
It was like the jumping graphics. Suddenly you're playing things like Star Glider, and even things like, even though some of the games there was a lot of bad games, early 16-bit games, but they just looked beautiful. And then I think, yeah, probably the next big jump. I mean, I went from Atari ST to the Amiga. It wasn't that much a jump. The sound was obviously better. Then the PC. Then you got your what was the 3D effects like graphics card, and suddenly you had
Yeah.
this, because the early PCs, it was like VGA, or if you had you would try and run it in super VGA and it'd be like 2 frames per second. So yeah, the PC obviously thing with it. But now I don't think, maybe going from the PC. I remember when the PlayStation, the first PlayStation came out. I rushed up to Toys R Us. I bought that with Destruction Derby and Ridge Racer, and I rushed down the road. connected it to my huge 32-inch CRT in the living room.
Yeah.
Nikon stereo, the full job, and seeing Ridge Racer and Tekken on my TV was like, wow, the future has literally arrived at home.
That was jaw-dropping, though, wasn't it? When you
It
saw
was.
3D texture map graphics at home. Yeah, I remember. I had a similar memory. My brother got
Yeah.
a PlayStation for in Christmas '95, I think it was, and the only game he had at the time was Ridge Racer with it. Yeah, and we just played that non-stop. And you go back to that first version of Ridge Racer, and I still think it looks good.
I think
Obviously,
so,
it's
yeah.
very simplistic. There's only I think there's only one map or something, isn't there, on the game or one course?
I think you
Um,
can, you could race it in reverse or whatever it was, sort of
yeah,
thing. But
but I mean, it didn't bother us
yeah,
because it looked amazing. Like it just felt like right. It felt like going into the arcade, didn't it? It was
aye, it's
insane.
phenomenal. And I don't think I can honestly say since then. I mean, I've got an Xbox Series X, whatever. I don't think I've ever had the wow factor since
No,
then.
no, you're right. I mean, to me, it kind of
Yeah.
probably when I saw the PlayStation 2, that felt like quite a jump from the PS1. But then since then, it's really felt like every generation has been a bit more of a slight iteration rather than an absolute massive jump like we
Incremental,
used to get.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, don't get me wrong. You put on I don't know if you've seen. I don't know if you've got an Xbox Series X. There's
Yes.
a demo called. You have got one.
Yeah, and the PS5.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Have you played the demo? What's it? Matrix. Blah 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 blah. It's a demo. Have you seen that?
I did. I only saw it on YouTube though. I didn't watch it on the on the Xbox itself.
Oh, you need to download it.
Yeah.
It's a demo. It's a playable demo, and it is. I think it uses is the Unreal Engine 5 or something.
The
This
Matrix
is
Awakens, that one, isn't it?
That's the one.
Yeah.
You'll need to install it. It's not a big
Mhm.
install. It is absolutely jaw dropping, because you've got you start off in a sort of town or city, I should say, and then you can go into like drone mode where you just can you rise up and you're looking down on the city, and you can look at like a building, I don't know, 2 miles away,
Yeah.
and you can fly to the building, you can land on the roof, and you can look at like there's maybe like an aerial on the roof, and you can go right up to the aerial, and you can see the rust and that the tension is just mind blowing, absolutely mind blowing. So if that's what the future is going to be, if like Grand Theft Auto is it 6, I think it is, if that's
Yeah.
going to be like that, the thing is, I know I will end up buying. I think it's coming out for the Series X, but if it doesn't, I'll end up buying the console just to play Grand Theft Auto 6, and I'll play it for half an hour, and then I'll go back to playing the Mister and playing Texas games because that's how I roll.
I find that as well. To me, I do. I am a modern gamer too.
Yeah.
Even though I tell myself I won't, I buy Call of Duty every single year, and I have since COD 4. My brother's always like, "Oh, I've got it. Do you fancy a game this week?" I'm like, "All right, then I'll get it." Last time, I'm not buying it next year. Then inevitably, I end up buying it. So I mean, games like that, like Grand Theft Auto, GTA 5. I put quite a few hours into that over the last decade. I'm hyped about GTA 6 as well. But you're right; it just feels like they take up so much time. Even like the days
Yeah.
of just coming home and putting a disc in or a cartridge and being able to play a game instantly. These days you get if you even manage to get a disc, often it's digital downloads.
Yeah.
You've always got like at least a 20-30 gig update you've got to do. And even with fast internet, particularly on day one, because the servers are getting hammered that much, it can generally be half a day till you get a play on the
Yeah.
game, which
Yeah.
that side of it is quite frustrating, I think.
Yeah. Brilliant. YouTube, you've obviously been in YouTube for when did you first start your channel, Dan? I mean,
Yeah, I think it was 2008. Quite a while ago now. Before that, I actually was making videos on. Do you remember Google Video?
uh, vaguely, yeah. I've got a
Yeah,
rough memory of that, but that's no so bad. I forget what I had for my dinner half an hour ago.
yeah. It was it's kind of short lived. It was around for a few years before Google bought YouTube. So I started making videos for that. I mean, they were just kind of videos of like old iPod. Well, I mean, at the time they weren't even that old. They felt like it, but iPods from like my first iPod from 2001. I think it was one of my first videos that I uploaded on there in 2007 onto Google Video. And then when YouTube came around, I set my channel up on there in 2008. So yeah, I've been at it, quite a while now on YouTube, and it's definitely a platform that's changed quite a bit in the time that I've been on there, to say the least.
It has, yeah. So how often you don't do that many videos now, do you?
No, I've got to say, I think this year has probably been my lowest year of output on YouTube to date. not through, not wanting to do videos. It's just, like you said before, having a day job and family and stuff. It's often, I don't do YouTube for a living or anything. Literally, I do them if I've got time to make a video, or I maybe get sent something. Like I got the new Atari 2600 Plus. The Atari were kind of to send me one of those units
nice.
a couple of weeks ago, and no obligation to make a video, but I thought, there's not many of them on YouTube yet, so I got it a bit early. I thought, well, I'll put the time in, give up my weekend to make a video for them about it. So generally, it's just if I've got the time and there's something I want to make a video about, then
yeah,
if I can fit it in, then I'll do it. But I mean, it's kind of my New Year's resolution that I would like to make. I think I've made about 3 or 4 videos in the last 12 months. I would like to try maybe get at least one a month out, but we always have good intentions at the start of the year. We'll see what happens.
Thing is, it's as you say, it's like my channel as well. It's a hobby, and it's like anything. If you're not really feeling it, then don't do it. Because obviously, the Retro Hour podcast, I think, is it you're up to episode 409? I think, is it?
Yeah, it'll be around there.
Wow.
Yeah, we did our 400th back in October. We're putting out our last one of the year on Friday this week. And then coming up in January, that'll be 8 years. We've been doing that now. And that is every single week. I mean, with the podcast, because it's audio only, it's kind of like there's less production time goes into it. Yourself trying to edit video and stuff. It can take so long, can't it? But audio is a bit more manageable.
So have you ever missed a week, or have you always managed to?
No, never. I mean, there's been a couple of episodes where maybe one of us has been sick, because there's 3 of us do it, myself, Joe and Ravi. But there's been maybe 2 or 3 episodes where one of us has like lost our voice or something, and there's just been 2 of us on. But yeah, touch wood, we've never missed a week, which surprises me saying that, which is nuts.
Do you feel an obligation to always have a one out?
Yeah, I think we do, because I think that's the thing. And one reason I've never done it on YouTube, some YouTubers like, new videos every Saturday or whatever. I've never done that on YouTube. I've never made a promise. Mm-hmm. So I kind of think then, like you said before, if you get home from like a long day at work and you're really just not feeling it, and you think, oh, I'll do a video next week instead, before I know it, 6 months have gone by. But with the podcast, we made a point of saying every single Friday there's going to be a new episode. And, we kind of book guests quite far in advance as well. So, for people who haven't heard it, really the Retro, it's like an interview podcast, really. We kind of dick around for the first half an hour, like us 3, just kind of talking about the news that's happened this week. But really the main bit of the podcast, main attraction is that we talk to a lot of developers and, people that did the graphics on games, or musicians, or people that ran the company. So really that's the main reason that we do the podcast, to kind of hear the stories from people who made the games that we grew up playing. Really, that was the aim of
it. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing about like what you guys do, what I do, even in my own sort of mundane little channel. I've a friend, Tony Temple, who he does the Ted Dabney Experience podcast.
Yes, with Paul Drury.
I mean, it's a great podcast. They're very, very, they're really nerdy about the stuff, about the detail, but they speak to like the real luminaries of the industry. And I think we've all got our place in this kind of hobby. And the thing is, in 100 years' time, when we've all gone to the great arcade in the sky, it'll be, if YouTube still exists in the ether somewhere, people are going to find the Retro or my channels, my whatever it is. I talk about my Friday waffles and that, and it's all part of archiving this hobby and speaking to guys like that. You I mean, I've had a few guys on my channel, nowhere near to the same kind of caliber of like the Retro Hour, but it's interesting to get these guys, because without people like ourselves that want to bring these guys into the fore and sit down and have a chat with them, it would be lost. It would be absolute lost.
I've said that before, it's kind of like if I think we're kind of at a stage now where we're quite lucky, because a lot of people that started the industry, I mean, it is still a relatively young industry. It's, just, you can say commercially about 40 odd years, isn't it? It's been running. So there is kind of still a lot of those original people that started it that are available to record their memories, but it might be a different story in 10, 15 years, 20 years. We've had a few on our podcast. I'd say maybe about 10 guests that we've had on the show that are no longer with us. So I'm pleased that we managed to record them while we could, because if you were doing a movie podcast now, for example, the movie industry started like in the 1880s, I think it was, the first movie came out, but you haven't got a chance of talking to those visionaries that set the industry up in the first place.
Right.
We have, so let's do it now. So like you said, if future generations in 50 or 100 years, they can look back and kind of see where it all came from. I'm
Yeah,
sure gaming in some form will still be around then.
Probably in a different format, but
Yeah, the
that's
PlayStation
awesome.
16 or something.
So, without putting you on the spot, have you had? Well, this isn't a bad question. Have you had a guest? I wouldn't say your favourite guest. Was there somebody you're like, oh, I can't wait to speak to this guy? Somebody that you really were kind of hyped about speaking to?
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said before, Sean Southern was one actually, just because, I loved his games growing up, even on the Amiga as well. So, I was really pleased when I was able to hook up with him, thanks to you, Alan. But I mean, we've had, Nolan Bushnell, getting him on for, I think, our 100th episode he was.
Yeah,
And it took a long time to set that up. I've got a feeling we're working on that for about 6 months. We had to go via, like, an agency, and then his assistant had to book it in his calendar, and then he was away doing conferences and all that. So it was quite an effort to get him. But I think that really felt like a moment having, who you could loosely term as like the father of the video games industry, we
yeah,
called him, which I know there are obviously other people that did it before him, but the guy that really made it a commercial success. So I think for me, having Nolan on, that was definitely one of my standout moments. And we've had people like, Charlie Brooker's been on as well.
yeah.
Always been a huge
Yeah.
fan of Charlie Brooker, and and he
He's
told
a-
us he listened to the podcast,
Yeah.
which I couldn't believe. He said he listens to it to fall asleep on a night, which I'm not sure whether that's a compliment, but I'll take it. Yeah,
He'll big you up and then he'll stab you in the
Yeah,
back. Yeah, there you
exactly.
go.
So, yeah, but
I
it was a
suppose-
real treat.
Yeah. You never managed to get Sir Clive Sinclair on, did you?
No, we actually, because Clive, I heard there was a few people who we spoke to who kind of knew Clive, so we kind of were going through a few people, and we managed to get his postal address, because I got told, I don't know how true this is, but someone who knew of, like, a friend of Clive said that he didn't really use a mobile phone, he didn't use the internet at home. He's very much kind of a, for someone who we kind of think in this, as like a real technologically advanced kind of guy. Apparently he's a bit of a technophobe in many ways. I mean, he was into his vehicles and stuff, but he wasn't really that clued upon, mobile phones, smartphones, that kind of thing. So the only way to really book him in for an interview was to write him a letter, which we did, but unfortunately we never heard back. So that was kind of the closest we came. Although we had Nigel Searle on the podcast from Sinclair, who was kind of Clive's kind of right-hand man back in the 80s. He was really interesting to talk to. So that was kind of, we got a good bit of a glimpse at Clive via Nigel a couple of years ago.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, every guest I've had on has been great, and I quite literally, I go into Facebook and I just do a quick search, and then you send a friend request, and then you send them a message, and to be fair, it's worked. That's how I got Sean Southern. Is that him? And I didn't know what Sean Southern looked like, and I think I then went into Google and it's like, that's the same guy. I'll send him a wee message, and you're thinking to yourself, what's the chance of somebody wanting to, here's some wee guy, wee Scottish guy. He's got a YouTube channel. He's a couple hundred subscribers. What's the chance of him wanting to come onto that? But it's worked pretty well. And I mean, I suppose the big scoop for me, although that has since been surpassed, was when Dominic Diamond agreed. I don't mind admitting I was shitting bricks. See, before I remember sitting, I can't remember what time it was. I was sitting waiting for him to come on, and I could feel my heart. And then the thing was, he was working that day, so it was audio only. But suddenly here's the games master talking to me, and it was funny because when I was talking to him, I mean, I think it's the first time I was nervous. I was nervous. I think it's quite evident in the first 20 minutes I was quite nervous. And then it just started to flow, and we had a great time. I had a really good time. But as I'm listening to him talking, I could have been listening to like a recording of him and think, no, this guy, that's Dominic Diamond, and he's talking to me. He's actually talking to me.
It's crazy when you think about it, isn't it? But you often find that, you're right, we reach out to people, I think there's no chance they're going to come on. And then you get a reply back like the next day. They're like, yeah, of course. And you find that people are actually quite up for talking about kind of what they've done, because a lot of them are like, I've never been asked about this stuff before. And you're like, well, how? You know what I mean? It's like, there's no one want to ask you about this kind of stuff.
Has there been any? You don't have to tell me you don't want to. Has there been guests that have said, sorry, not interested?
Oh yeah, loads. I'd say probably about a quarter of the people we reach out to are like, we have some that are like, oh, I'll do it in 6 months. Ask me again then. Then you ask them in 6 months and be like, I'm a bit busy. Ask me again in 6 months. Some of them, I actually really appreciate the ones who are like, no, I don't do that kind of thing, then that's
Yeah.
fine. It's the ones who are like, you know, either they don't reply, then you think, well, did they get the message or not? Or there's sometimes like, oh, let me think about it, and then they string you along for ages. Or we've had a couple that, you know, I won't name names, who agree to it. You prep the questions, you spend an afternoon getting it all ready. You sit down in front of the microphone, send the conference link, you wait in there 10 minutes, no one on
No
yet.
show.
Send them a message, yeah, you. Then an hour later, the reply, oh, sorry, got caught in a meeting. Can we reschedule for next week? And then I had one that did that about 4 times, I think, and in the end, you're like, okay, we'll let that one go.
Yeah,
But yeah.
screw you. At the end of the day, you know, nobody's bigger than anybody else, and yeah, it's kind of common decency. But there's been a few people. Tony Crowder, who is one of the early programmers, Martin Galway, they've both read my messages and just simply ignored me. So
Yeah, we get
screw
that a
it.
lot. It's like, you know, not everyone's up for it. I understand that, and it's like some people just don't like talking on, you know, podcasts. We had that with because we did a book for the Retro Hour this year,
That's
and
right. Yeah.
one of the great things about that was we were able to get people in there who didn't like doing audio interviews, like Andrew Braybrook. I've always wanted him on the podcast, and for many years he's been like, "Oh, I'll do a written interview, but I don't like talking on the phone, and I don't really do that kind of thing." Even though he does live events, you know, he doesn't mind doing that, but he just doesn't like doing podcasts or videos. So we actually had an opportunity to then kind of feature Andrew on the podcast, as it were, via the book. And we had a couple of Japanese developers in there who can't speak English, but, you know, we could translate them into English. So stuff like that kind of on an audio format limits you a little bit. But then, you know, on a different medium, like a book, for example, we're able to get these people in there finally.
Yeah, I think that my kind of biggest scoop, my favourite guest, and all my guests have been brilliant. They really, really have. But getting Jeff Minter on,
Yeah.
I mean, I've kind of known Jeff for the best part of 25 years, because when I first got the internet, first I went into whatever it was called, Yahoo, and like, what do I do here? I'll type in Commodore 64, and then it came up, oh, there's Jeff Minter. Jeff Minter came up a forum, Yak Yak forums. Oh, what's this? Create a username, Mainmeister. And so I'd met Jeff at a couple of we used to have, I suppose it was called Retrovision, and I suppose it was like the precursor to your big gaming events, your sort of like Nerg and Play Blackpool and all these revival. This was a group of guys on the Yak Yak forum used to all converge on a pub in Oxford, take along machines, and Jeff Minter used to turn up because Yak Yak was a forum that was pulled together around Lamasoft. But I've been chasing Jeff, not quite literally, for quite a number of years, and he is the most difficult guy. He doesn't reply to emails. He doesn't reply to text messages. He's just like the. And so I thought, right, I'm not finished with him, but I thought there's no point. I'm only going to do it so much. And then when I was doing that 12-hour live stream, which you very kindly donated, Dan, it's
That was incredible work, mate. Yeah,
that was very kind of you. Thank you. I put a link. I thought, well, you know what? It's for charity, and it's at the end of the day, it's not about, oh, look at me, look how good I am, blah blah blah. It's about getting all these people into one room, and if you're a retro gamer, why would you not want to watch it and listen to these guys talking, you know? And so I put a link on Yak Yak. It does still exist, the forum, but there's not a lot of movement. So I put a link to it, and then Giles, who is Jeff's kind of coding partner, he made a comment, and I said, "Oh, I don't suppose you guys fancy coming on it?" And he went, "Yeah, send me an email." And I thought, they'll not turn up. And it was supposed. I deliberately. It was meant to be. Was it 8 o'clock to 8 o'clock? So I thought, what I'll do is I'll schedule Jeff and Giles in for 8 o'clock. So if they don't turn up, it doesn't matter, because we've done the 12 hours. And lo and behold, there they appear.
Like, yeah, it was a nice bonus, that wasn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, it was brilliant. It was a fantastic day. I mean, you've got I had John here, was the second last guest on, and you're having to say, look, John, we could talk all day. I'm really going to have to go, mate. I'm going to have to let you go. And you had to literally kick these people out.
To make room for the next one. Yeah.
Bring somebody else in. And Jeff is just I think he's been in the industry so long. He's such a down to earth guy. There's no airs and graces about him at all.
No.
And he's a genuine gamer. I mean, when you talk to him, and I know you guys have had it on the retro, he's so passionate about what he does. He writes games that he wants to play. And I think that's why when you get a game like Mama Llama, I don't know if you've ever played it, don't.
Right.
It's he took it personally, because I think at that point he was writing for Zap magazine, and then he brought out Mama Llama, and they just crucified it. They also it's utterly garbage, and Jeff Kinney went in the huff. And he,
Right.
looking 30 years on, he does. Yeah, acted like a petulant child, you know.
Well, I said they can't make perfect games every time. I spoke to Jeff
Yeah.
about there was I don't know if you've ever played the Defender 2000 version he did on the Atari Jaguar, which
I've
is
got.
have you got that?
Did you say Defender, Dan?
Yeah, Defender 2000, not the Tempest game that
Ah,
he did.
right.
That
'Cause
was really good.
I've got a Jaguar. I've got Tempest. I don't think I've played Defender 2000. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it came out after the Tempest 2000 version he did. It was kind of meant to be, again, another arcade classic reimagined for the Jaguar. But he was telling us on the podcast that kind of they had a lot of input in there. They wanted the sprites to be bigger and they wanted the ship to be bigger and more effects. And it kind of felt like, they made him put so much stuff in the game that it ruined the experience. And I got the feeling that he wasn't happy how that turned out. So, there's always going to be a few, isn't there, that don't hit the mark.
Yeah, was that the one? I think the spaceship was absolutely huge.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, way too big for a Defender game. There is like a classic version of it in there that's kind of like more like the original, which is the one to play. But yeah,
right. Have you got to take any unlock? Have you got to unlock it or something? Is it? Or?
No, it's just on the menu. You can go like classic mode.
Right.
Yeah, so just don't play the main game. Play the classic mode.
Yeah. You do know that. I don't know if Tempest 2000 it was actually written for a spinner, which never actually came out. Do you know that? I don't know if...
I actually played it at I think it was Play Expo, probably about 2017, 2018.
Yeah.
And he had a modded controller there with the spinners on, and it was just made a world of difference.
One of the guys that watches my channel said, "Oh, I mod the Jaguar controllers." He said, "Look, send it to me, and I'll mod it for you." So he very kindly modded it, so it's now got this spinner thing in it. And yeah, you've got to press buttons, a sequence of buttons, and then it unlocks the spinner version, and it's awesome. It's a wee bit slow, but it's
a way to play Tempest, though, isn't it? It was the arcade version was made like that as well.
Got to use a spinner. Listen, mate, I'm conscious of time. I mean, we're quite literally running out of time here. We're not even started yet. So listen, Dan. I mean, I think we'll need to reconvene at some point and get you on proper, because I think we could just talk and talk and talk.
Yeah, whenever you want, mate.
Yeah. I don't know if you've listened to any of my podcasts, the Nice and Nasty. It's my take on sort of desert island games. You're going to a desert island, you can take 3 games, and these are the only 3 games you will ever get to play ever again. Now, it can have, if it's a multiplayer game, you can play with people in other countries, whatever. It can be any platform at all, but it's not all jelly and ice cream. Unfortunately, I'm going to then ask you to pick 3 games which are either so awful, you hate, you just annoy you, it's crap, overpriced, whatever. You can choose to eradicate them from, is it Room 101, whatever it's called?
Yes, yep.
Something like that, something like that, mate. So give me your first game, the first game that you would take to said desert island, and tell me why.
Okay, I mean, we said before that I do play modern games as well, and I could have picked something like The Last of Us or Call of Duty, But the way I saw this is, obviously, if it's a game that I'm going to be playing for the rest of my life, as it were, on this desert island, then it probably should be, I'm going to stick to retro games for this, because I think if these are games that I've played for 30-odd years, then obviously they're going to be games that have got a bit of replayability for me.
Yeah.
Now, the first one, believe it or not, is actually a Commodore Plus 4 game. And this one is Treasure Island. I don't know if you're familiar with this. This came out from, it was a Mr. Micro software back in 1984. There was a port of it for the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 as well. And it was by a guy called Greg Duddle. And the music was made by David Whittaker.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, nice little game. And it's kind of, the reason I picked this is when I got that Commodore Plus 4 for Christmas 1987, this is like the first game I really remember sitting down playing. Because my cousin Graham came over to help me set my Plus 4 up and tune it into the telly, because it was back in those days when you used RF on your television. So it came up and helped me set it up, and this was the first cassette tape that we loaded up. And first time I used a joystick on my computer, and it was a memory that really sticks in my mind. And also one of the few gaming experiences I've got where I remember playing this game with my mum when I was a kid, because my mum's never been a gamer. She actually worked in IT in the 70s, but she's very much of the mindset that computers are like a tool or a work toy. Not to play games. But she actually sat down with me that day, I remember, over a homemade chocolate cake that she made, and we played Treasure Island on Christmas Day afternoon. And it is a really interesting game. If you've played the Willow Pattern Adventure,
I
on the
know the Willow
Amstrad,
pattern. Yep,
it
yep.
is basically a version of that, just kind of reskinned to look like the classic Robert Louis Stevenson story, Treasure Island. So your protagonist is Jim Hawkins. You've got to fight through the pirates, and there's kind of two different types of pirates in the game. You've got a blue one or a green one, and the green pirates will throw their cutlasses at you, whereas the blue ones won't. So really, you've got to kind of either tease the green pirates to throw their cutlasses, then collect them, and then sometimes you don't even have to kill them. You can just walk around them if the path is clear. But if you encounter a blue one, you've got to then search around the map until you find a cutlass to kill them and get by. And the aim of the game is to you've got to collect the spade to dig the treasure up. You've got to get I think it's a key as well to unlock the treasure chest, and also a map as well to find your way back to your treasure, back to your ship at the end of it when you've got the treasure. And the end of the game is really scary because when you've found the treasure, you've dug it up, you've then got to run all the way back to the start of the game with the treasure, and you're chased by Long John Silver, who he mirrors your joystick movements, but also he moves about twice the speed that you do. So generally, if he's coming on the screen at the left and you're about to go off the right, he will look like he's just about caught you up. But then you go to the next screen, he's back at the start again. And if you get stuck at an obstacle, you're a goner and you only get one life. It's game over.
Game over. That sounds bloody horrendous. Actually, you know what game that reminds me of is Another World, when you start off and you run right to the right hand side of the screen, and then you get that whatever it is,
devil dog thing.
Yeah, and it starts chasing you, and it's just about to get you, and it falls over a rock and trips up. It's like, shit.
But imagine a whole game of that pretty much. You're doing it for like 10, 15 minutes trying to get back to the start. It is horrifying. It is one of the scariest video game experiences I've ever
So
had.
it's kind of like what I'm trying to remember the genre we called that back in the day. Sort of like an arcade adventure, I think they called it. Attic Attack, Saber Wolf type kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, and it's good graphics and good music as well on the PS4. It's a game that still to this day holds my interest. And I thought if I'm playing this on a desert island, maybe maybe it'll give me some hints to escape from the island. I thought as well, maybe.
So is that a game that you presumably you completed it on a regular basis?
Yes, and they often take the piss out of me on the Retro Hour that I haven't completed many games in my life. There are games I generally complete games that have got stories if I want to see the story through to the end. Like adventure games are probably the genre that I've finished most games, but a lot of games, I'll meet in a hands up. I'm not the best games player. I'm pretty shit at a lot of games, so I'll generally, I'll get frustrated at a game before I finished it, or something else will come along that kind of takes my interest away. But this is probably the first game I remember playing through from start to finish.
Yeah. So, and you just enjoy the process. It's like watching one of your favorite films, even though you know the ending, you enjoy it. Yeah. I think it sounds to me like it's a nostalgia game. It brings back a lot of happy memories. Your mum, the chocolate cake, you were younger and that kind of stuff. No responsibilities. It was much simpler times back then, eh?
And the magic of having, my own computer. And, the first game that I played on my own machine in my bedroom, it's, something that'll stay with me forever. So I think I'd have to take that game with me. Yeah, I wouldn't be without it.
And was that one of the pack games that you got with it?
Yes, it was. Yeah, they released it commercially, but then Commodore actually, I don't know why they kind of brought it in-house, but because you got with the Plus4, there was about 10, 15 Commodore branded tapes that you got with it that had like a white cover and like the Commodore logo on it as well. So it was actually a Commodore published game. But then I think Mr. Micro put it out before as like a one that you could buy in the shop separately. But this was one that I think every Plus4 owner got Treasure Island. It seems to be very well known in that small community.
Well, it's quite an apt game, I suppose. Treasure Island, Desert Island, brilliant. Okay, that is game number 1. Game number 2.
Game number 2. Is this a bad game then I'm picking now? Is it?
No. Go for all the good ones first.
Okay. Well, again, I mean, we were talking about Sean Southern before, so I think it's got to be probably my favorite racing game of all time, Lotus Turbo Challenge 2 on the Amiga, which to me is I love Forza games and stuff like that, and Need for Speed. That's the Ridge Racer I loved as well. But to me, it was kind of the first real arcade racer that I played at home, kind of obsessively. And it's still a game that I've got an Amiga 1200 next to me with the WHD load menu on there.
Yeah.
So you put it on, there's like every Amiga game's on it. There's like, a couple of thousand on there. First game, if I can't think of anything else to play, hit L on the keyboard. Yeah, Lotus Turbo Challenge. Let's have a go, Lotus 2. And it's a game that I remember getting that not long after I got my Amiga 500, actually. And I did apologize to Sean for this because I did get a pirated copy of it. So I said to Sean, I'm sorry, mate. I did pirate your game back in the day. And I always feel bad if we have developers on the podcast who I know I pirated their games back then. I always ask them, like, are you working on anything now? Anything on Steam that I can buy? Give you a few quid to say sorry.
Make up for it. I've done that. I tend to say I bought it as well just because I felt guilty.
Yeah.
I mean, what a game. I mean, I was going to say lucky enough. The early, I did mention it earlier on, the early games that came out for the Amiga were generally ports of the Atari ST.
Yes.
And I think, when the 16-bit machines came out, developers, they thought, well, wait a minute, they're used to playing games in the Commodore 64 with blocky graphics or the Spectrum with no sound, so we can just put out something that looks nice. Don't worry too much about the playability. That doesn't matter. They're going to look at the screenshots. They're going to buy it. They're going to give us their $24.99, and that's what happened. We just when you get a new system, you just want games. And I'm talking about things like Crazy Cars, which is awful. Crazy Cars 2 is just as bad.
I didn't mind the third one though. Actually, Crazy Cars 3 was all right. I thought
that was that. Yeah. And of course, well, Lotus, the original Lotus challenge came out, which was like one player. No, you could play two players, but it was split screen. You couldn't do full.
Yeah, it was always small at the top, even on one player mode.
It was
split screen, wasn't it?
It was. Now, again, I was lucky enough to have Sean and Andrew Morris on my channel, and also interviewed them for Play Blackpool. And what I found was absolutely incredible was it was only these two guys that made the game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I thought there'd be like 100 people. No, it was just I did the graphics, he did the coding. Couldn't believe
such a big license.
Yeah, I know. I did ask Andrew, if you ever play the original, you'll see it, when you're playing the original, the screen that isn't getting used is like the parked car, and you see the mechanics, and there's one guy going like that in the background. I'm like, what was he doing there? He's using a torque wrench, right? Okay, yep.
Of course he is. You have to wonder if they put stuff in there, kind of like Games Master did, these innuendos they'd laugh at that the kids wouldn't get. Yeah.
Obviously, that joke is lost on the podcast, but anyway, you can.
There was a hand movement involved. Yeah.
But I mean, I remember distinctly, again, I think it was a pirate copy, loading up Lotus Turbo Challenge 2, and it just starts off, it's got that distinct, it goes
that Barry Leach music in it,
and it's just like, wow. And you've got the CD player, it's like, this is just mind-blowing.
That song by Barry Leach on there, because I had a friend, my friend Mandip at school, he was because I had a Commodore Plus 4 and he always took the piss out of me because his parents bought him an Amstrad PC. He was like, oh, your computer's shit compared to mine. And then I got my Amiga and he's still like, oh, it's still a Commodore though, isn't it? And he came over and I said, watch this. And I loaded up that intro, that song, his jaw hit the floor. He's like, fuck. Next day he went home, asked his mum, can I have an Amiga, please? So that game sold an Amiga to my friend Mandip.
I still think, I mean, you'll know better than me if you still use your Amiga. It's probably still one of the most impressive 16-bit games. I mean, it was, he proved that, I mean, look at Outrun. Outrun was a god-awful mess. These guys proved that the Amiga could do a racing game, and if only they had given the Outrun license to Sean and Andrew, who would have been playing a great version.
I mean, even Sean did, some good races on the Plus 4. I remember a game called Speed King that he did on there that I used to play, and that was like a really good, bike racing game that he did on the Plus 4 C16. So he had a history of doing it, and stuff like Supercars he did as well, which I know was an overhead one. But I think he was kind of the king of, for me back then, of kind of those kind of arcade races at home on the home micros. And again, like you said, I mean, because I loved Outrun in the arcades, and I did play the Amiga version of it, and even as a kid, been disappointed by it and thinking this is nowhere near as good as the arcade. I mean, but Lotus, that came along, and we used to, I remember my friend Ricky got an Amiga 500 shortly after as well, and we did the you could actually link to Amigas using a serial cable.
Yeah,
and you could play the game. So basically, you needed two tellies. you'd link your Amigas via this. It was a null modem cable, it was called, and you'd have 2 copies of the game, which obviously was easy to do with Xcopy. Then you'd load it up, and it was like head-to-head racing on 2 separate machines. So like local like LAN gaming, back in like 92, 93, which is nuts.
Mental. Of course, they brought out the sequel, the third one, which I wasn't impressed with it, and I remember saying to Andrew and that Sean, what happened? He says that we were trying to put in too many ideas, and there was like warps and all that, and they said it was just too much, and they admitted that it wasn't great.
I was thinking though, if I was taking this on a desert island, the third one's got that like the procedural generated maps, hasn't it? That Rex construction kit thing. So maybe that would be better if you're playing that, for like the rest of your life. It might be the better option because
if you can turn off all the fancy kind of warps and that kind of stuff, you never know. Yeah. But great game, awesome. Right, and your third game of choice, Squire.
Well, I want the puzzle game in here as well. Something to keep the mind sharp while I'm on this desert island on my own for the rest of time. And I considered there's a couple of puzzle games I thought of. One of them was Pushover on the Amiga. If you remember that one, that was it was a Quavers kind of tie-in, which
Dominoes type thing, wasn't it?
Yeah. Love that game. Great music, great graphics as well. But actually, I went with the classic Lemmings as my third desert island choice, just because again that was another game that I got with my Amiga 500 Plus that Christmas '91. And I must admit, when I first loaded Lemmings up, it didn't hold my interest. First day I didn't know what to do on it because first of all, I wasn't familiar with using a mouse. I'd use joysticks on my Plus 4, but it was really the first time I played a mouse-driven game. I remember like loading it up and being like, oh, I don't know what's going on here, putting it back in the box and going back to playing Bart Simpson again. And a few days later, one of my friends came over, he knew how to play it, and he showed me. And when I got it, I was like, wow. And like, I don't think I played anything else on the Amiga, for a couple of months until I managed to get some games from my dad's mate down the pub. So Lemmings to me, that was just, the ultimate puzzle game. And also something that it's weird because Lemmings has got quite a steep learning curve in some ways, because you play the fun levels at the beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are so simple. I can blast through the first like 20 of them, but then there's a massive change in difficulty. And if you go to like the next levels up, some of them are very unforgiving. So I think in terms of a game that's going to keep you playing for a long time, and something that's really going to get you thinking, I think that's perfect. And also this time of year, generally at some point on Christmas Eve, I'll no doubt dig out the Christmas Lemmings levels as well. So there's something for all seasons in there.
Yeah, I just like yourself. I had my Amiga, and then I got engaged, and it's like, oh, we need a deposit for the house, right? Okay, I'll sell my computer, blah, blah. And I literally went for about 2-3 years with. I think I got the Game Boy. That was my gaming platform for about 3 years, and then I got an Amiga again. And I went to my mate's house, and he showed me this game, Lemmings. I'm like, oh, this is crap. Look at the crap graphics.
Yeah.
And then I started playing it, and it's so addictive. It's a beautiful game. Have you ever completed it? I don't know how many levels were in the original.
Oh God, yeah, I've got a feeling there's well over 100. Yeah, there's a lot on there. I've seen the ending. I don't know how I did it. There might be a cheat you can, or there's a password option on Lemmings, isn't there, where you can skip to a level if you know the passwords. I've got a feeling the final like end screen has got its own password, so you can see it. And I've got a feeling from memory it's just a picture of all the DMA design developers, like in some cartoon Lemmings, and you hear like a round of applause.
Really? Yeah.
No spoilers, but yeah, if you haven't finished it, yeah, great. And even like stuff like Lemmings 2: The Tribes, when that came out, love that as well. I remember getting that on it'd been Amiga Formats Christmas cover disc, probably 92, the demo of it.
Yeah.
Playing that all throughout the Christmas holidays that year at school, and just like, I love Lemmings, everything about it. But then it got to like, the later ones, when it went into 3D, I was like, give up on it.
Started getting a bit stupid. Yeah, just it lost the kind of the appeal and the sort of the charisma and the charm of the original little graphics. So yeah. No, listen, absolutely three great choices. Obviously, Lemmings is going to keep your brain kind of going, ticking over. It's a game you've never completed. Lotus Turbo Challenge when you want to just have a bit of blast, a bit of an arcade thrill, and then obviously your Treasure Island when you want to go back to whenever it was, 1992 or something, with your mum and the chocolate cake, and
yeah. Sit back with the coconut juice and play a few of these games on the island. Yeah, let the days fly by.
Anyway, we're going to have to come crashing down to earth now, because you're now. I'm going to ask you to pick three games that you wake up with a cold sweat when you think of them. For any reason, what would they be? What would game number one?
Right. Well, this one is it was a big disappointment for me because it was a game that I was very hyped for a couple of years since I saw a demo of it in Comet. Actually, we mentioned Comet before, which was obviously a big electronic store back in the day. And I remember walking in there and seeing a Psygnosis demo disc running on. Do you remember the Commodore CD TV?
Yes, I do. I never had one, but it was like a sort of multimedia system.
Yeah, a bit like a Philips CDI. It was kind of Commodore's version of that. Really, it was just like an Amiga 500 in like a box that looked like a hi-fi's separate or a
It was
VCR.
black.
Yeah, I mean, it looked beautiful, gorgeous. Had like a CD caddy in the front that you put the discs in and loaded it in. I've got one today. Not a lot of great titles came out on it, but Psygnosis did a demo disc kind of showing what the CD-TV could do. And there's a lot of clip on there of like these guys in front of a tank, and there's like sample speech. And first time I'd seen full motion video, and this was it was an early version of Microcosm. And Microcosm was a game that came out on several platforms later on. I've looked it up. It came out on the Mega CD. It came out on the 3DO. There was an MS-DOS version of it. It came out on the FM Towns as well, and the Amiga CD32, which was the platform that I finally got to play that game on when I got a CD32. I mean, to me, just experiencing that moment when I saw real people moving. Admittedly, it was like a postage stamp on the screen, like the Mega CD was, for example. But just seeing film and hearing actors talking, I was just so hyped for that game. And I don't know if you've ever played that game or got an experience with kind of how it plays.
I don't. I mean, the name is familiar, but I can't say I've ever played it. I'm not. Is it kind of spacey type thing, or you're saying it more kind of tanks?
Well, no, the intro is kind of basically you get these, these army guys. It's set in the year 2051 in a kind of dystopian future on an alien planet, and the government's. I've got a. Do you remember the movie Inner Space that came out back in the 80s?
Yeah,
it's kind of like that.
Dennis Quaid, I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of loosely based on that. So you play a guy who basically goes into a mini spaceship who gets injected into someone's body, and then you fly around his veins and his bowels and everything as well. It's a bit disgusting in some ways, but I mean, you get this great intro on there, so it sets it up really well, and it's kind of one of the first full motion video intros, probably the first I ever saw. And when you watch that, I just remember thinking, oh my God, this game's going to be like next level. Then all it is, it's kind of like these nicely rendered moving tunnels in the background with a really substandard shooting game. You're in a spaceship just kind of going around and just shooting enemies that appear in front of you down tunnels.
Yeah. There's a game similar to that. The one, what's it called? Sewer Shark.
I haven't played that one.
Yeah, Sewer Shark that was actually my very, very, very first video that I ever did. I played Sewer Shark. It's called a 10-minute mashup, and I picked bad games to play. But yeah, it was, you say, it was almost like pre-rendered. And you just had this kind of crude sprite type thing, and it was ultimately like there was no gameplay really. It was so basic.
Yeah, I mean, they'd use like, Silicon Graphics workstations, that they use like, for Terminator 2 and that, to render these 3D graphics in there. I think Rick Wakeman did like the soundtrack to it, as well as, Tim Wright obviously did some from Psygnosis as well. So it was really hyped up and a beautiful looking game. In many ways, it was a bit similar to something like Rise of the Robots, where it was all kind of glitzy presentation, but the game itself was really let you down.
Although I've not seen the game, I think what you've pretty much described as the whole next gen multimedia. We were all sold on, this is going to be fantastic. And I remember playing the Seventh Guest on the PC and seeing, as you say, like full motion video, albeit it's really crude looking, but this was like, wow, this is going to be incredible. And it just very quickly we realised that most of these games are absolute tosh, because it was like bugger all gameplay.
It's just like a puzzle game, really, isn't it? When you get into it, these really crap puzzles.
So did you buy the game then? Yeah.
Yes, I did. So I got an Amiga CD32, which wasn't a system that was known for its good quality games. A lot of shovelware on there, but there were a few games that were like, because I mean, a lot of CD32 games were basically Amiga 1200 games dumped onto a CD, and a lot of them were like 2 or 3 megabytes in size on there, but Microcosm was a game that they advertised as being like a full game that takes advantage of the CD32's hardware. So I got that for, it would have been Christmas 93 or 94 maybe. And I remember just loading it up after I watched an intro, played it for about 10 minutes, and I was like, That's shit.
Absolutely crushed, and that was
Yeah.
like probably 25 quid or something. It cost probably more
Yeah.
than that because it was on a CD as well.
Yeah. Wouldn't surprise me if it was like 30, 40 quid. Yeah.
Did you get any other games apart from that for Christmas?
That yeah, no, I mean we generally might have got maybe 1 or 2 games every Christmas because like I
Yeah.
said, most of my collection was from friends in the playground. I mean, I did get Rise of the Robots a year after, so
Oh, dearie
yeah.
me, there. You had some cruel parents.
I know, didn't I just?
It was probably that bloody salesman that was flogging all the
Yeah.
+4s that was telling your mum and dad, this is a great game, this is the one you want.
Yeah, we sell loads of these. Everyone at school's got it.
Yeah, I can absolutely feel your pain, Dad. So that is Game of Horror number 1. What is choice number 2?
Next one is Echo the Dolphin. No, Echo the Dolphin. I know it's got a good reputation. A lot of people love that game. I must admit, I remember watching that on. It would have been Games Master, I think, did a feature on it back in like 92, 93, whenever that came out, and watching it and thinking that game looks really interesting. And then my friend Martin got it on his Mega Drive, and I remember playing it back then, and we just sat. I've got a feeling he rented it maybe from our local video shop, and I played it again recently because we did like a bonus podcast for our patrons on the Retro Hour. Called the After Hours, where we kind of picked games that we thought were overrated.
Yeah.
And I played Echo the Dolphin again just to make sure that my memory, wasn't deceiving me. But again, I just played it, and it's got some gorgeous graphics. I think the music's nice as well. But it just kind of feels like the whole game is, it's just confusing. I don't know, kind of the objective of the game, and it's just confusing to find your way around it, and it doesn't seem like there's much purpose to it in many ways.
Yeah, I think the phrase you're looking for is pretentious wank.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
it was. I didn't have a Mega Drive back in the day, and I remember seeing adverts on TV because Sega, to take this good takes ages and all this kind of stuff. And there was, Echo the Dolphin, and you saw it when it was jumping out of the water. And to people like myself who didn't have a Mega Drive, I thought, oh, this is like Sonic the Hedgehog, but you're underwater and you're going to be fighting sharks and it's going to be killing things. And it was only later on when I actually played the game, I thought, what is the point of this game? I can't.
Yeah.
You've got this little sonar thing, and it's just completely pretentious. And I'm. I totally get you what you're saying there. Probably a lot of people are like, "Whoa, how can you say that?" But yeah, it was absolutely bollocks. I mean, I don't know who it appealed to.
Yeah, I think it was an experimental game. I get that they were doing something different, which I'll always applaud developers for doing that and companies taking some risks. And I guess it was a time when that was probably it was when the industry, after they had that hit with Sonic the Hedgehog, I guess maybe there was less of that came along after they kind of knew what worked and what didn't. But I just think it just felt like more of a kind of graphical demo and kind of what the Mega Drive could do than something that was actually a fun gameplay experience, I think.
What was the point of the game?
I started figuring that out. Yeah, I mean, I remember I picked it up for about half an hour, just swimming around, and I unlocked a door. Then I got in, I got past an enemy. But yeah, I mean, there's no real indication of what you're meant to do, I think, and I think that's why some people love it. That a lot of those old games don't hold your hand.
Yeah.
You're just kind of swimming around exploring it. But I've always been more of I love adventure games for the stories, but I've always been more of an arcade kind of guy or racing games. These kind of exploratory games like that where you're just spending hours trying to figure out what you're meant to be doing didn't really hold my attention.
Anybody can tell Dan and I what the point of the game was.
Yeah.
Answers on a postcard to the usual address.
I could have read the manual, but who's got time for that when you're like 12 years old?
So did you buy that game or was it
no
free again?
I didn't know. It's like I said, my friend rented it, and I remember us playing it for a whole weekend and just being like, games when they're hyped up so much that you really want to like them. And like I remember sitting there next to my mate and thinking, it's actually pretty shit, but he probably really is enjoying this, so I'll play along and pretend, it's great, isn't it? And then later on, he's like, it's not very good, this isn't. And we're like,
it's shit. It's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
This is actually crap, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Yeah, turn it off.
Yeah, stick Sonic the Hedgehog back on.
There's been games in the past that I've played, and I'm like, I'm not enjoying this. But everybody tells me it's the best game ever. So it must be me, and you kind of persevere and you think I better stick with it because it's obviously going to suddenly reveal itself to be this all-encompassing, wonderful experience. And no, I'm not feeling it. So yeah, interesting to know. I mean, I think that it probably got great reviews on what would it be? I can't remember the name of the magazines.
Mean Machines and CMVG.
Yeah, Mean Machines. That's right. Yeah, I'm sure it probably did because again, back then, I think every game, it was always touted like, what was it, 16 megabit, 32 megabit.
all the specs.
It was all, and you were talking about microcosm, about
Yeah.
rendered intros and what do you call it? What was the name of the computer that did all the
Silicon graphics, yeah.
it was all
Yeah.
these phrases that got flung out. You thought, oh, this is going to be incredible. When you load up and go, this is absolute pish.
Yeah.
we bought into the hype, and that was it. Again, it was another one. The thing is, not Sonic the Hedgehog, Echo the Dolphin does look nice. It's got some nice effects, but what were they on at the point when they made that? I don't think you'd ever see a game like that now. It's too risky.
Yeah, and I've got, I imagine people are yelling at the podcast now, the phone, going, "Yeah, it's one of my favorite games. I love it." 'Cause I know it's well regarded, but it's just, I don't see it. Yeah.
What did Javi make of it?
Yeah, they actually agreed with me when we talked about it. They were like, "Yeah, Joe is kind of our resident, Sega fanboy, loves the Mega Drive." But even he agreed with me. And he knows the Mega Drive library inside out, and he said, "Yeah, it's not a game he ever goes back to play." So there you go. Sorry, Echo the Dolphin fans.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear you didn't get that one, because I mean that would have been a step too far. Microcosm, Rise of the Robots, and Echo the Dolphin. Oh dearie me.
I'd have stopped celebrating Christmas if that happened.
So finally, the last one. Thankfully, Dan, game number 3 of
last one.
What would it be?
Well, and this is again a game that I know is very well regarded. I'm not on a mission to piss people off today, and it is by a group of guys who I love. I've interviewed them on the podcast, met them at Play Expo and other events many times, and massive respect for them. It's actually a Bitmap Brothers game, and I love the Bitmap Brothers normally. A lot of their games are incredible, but I'm going to go with Magic Pockets, which I think is a massively overrated game, and again another one that a lot of people love. I just can't see the appeal in this game at all. And I think it's the weakest out of the Amiga Bitmap Brothers games that I played.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Bitmap Brothers, I actually thought you were going to go for another game. I thought you were going to go for Speedball, which that would be, if I was to do this for me, I would probably pick Speedball, which would upset a lot of people. The Bitmap Brothers games were, graphically, they were absolutely out this world. They're phenomenal. They're real graphical style. Them and Team 17, they just had a really nice, brilliant graphics, sound, etc. But I think it was probably one of these ones where they can't do any wrong, and they put out this platform game with Betty Boo doing the do.
Yeah, doing the do, that was it. Which is a great rendition, it sounded very similar, yeah.
Of course, it was all, I mean, they'd brought out Xenon 2 with Bomb the Bass,
yeah,
and it was all, I mean, words like, what do you call it? Digitized, digitized soundtrack, that's going to be great. And it had Betty Boo doing the do, and it was just shit. And instead of, here's the thing, I don't know if this applies to you, Dan. I'm a certain age, I'm older than you, but even back then, I don't want my character to be some little cool dude with a baseball cap. Not normal baseball caps.
How big are your pockets?
with glasses, like a cool dude. That's why, see when you play things like 1080 on the N64, what do you call it? Snowboard. I was going to say snow surfing, snowboarding.
Yeah,
you've always got the guys with the baggy trousers, and they're like cool dudes from the 90s. I'm like, oh my god, that's a different generation to me. So yeah, the character himself was annoying, and it had this horrible game mechanic. Instead of firing a gun or whatever, he threw these little cyclones out his pocket or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're like shells or something, weren't they? Yeah, they look like little whirlwinds.
Around or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do remember. I think it was Amiga Power. It actually panned the game. It didn't get. Say this isn't very good, and I bought it from the piracy place, and not good. The funny thing is, I have actually played it in the intervening years, and it's not as bad as I remember it to be. But I think that's because you look at any of these old games and they do look outdated, and so you're probably a wee bit more forgiving.
Yeah.
And you've not just lashed out 40 quid for it either. So there is that.
Yeah, you're right. And I think I remember watching, there was a kids' TV show called Motormouth. And if you remember that, it was on the late 80s and early 90s. And they actually played Magic Pockets on there. And it was,
Yeah.
kids would ring up on the phone, and it was so low tech the way they did it. So you call up and you could win a prize, and you'd say there was literally a guy like behind the camera who was playing it on an Amiga 500 with a joystick, and the kid on the phone would go like, right, walk left, and the guy would move the joystick left, and they go fire, and he'd hit the fire button, and often you'd hear the kid going, walk left, and the guy'd move right, and they said, no, I said left, and you go, oh, shit, wrong way. So it was like so low tech, and I remember seeing it on TV and actually thinking, oh, what's that game? And then got a copy of it off, my dad's mate down the pub. But then, just getting it home, and then for an Amiga game, because often the Amiga was kind of famed for its like beautiful scrolling, wasn't it? But you play Magic Pockets, and it's got the frame rate is terrible on there, and the scrolling is, it looks like a straight Atari ST port, with no kind of Amiga optimization.
The thing is, that was, I think, I'm trying to think, did that come out before or after Gods? I think it came out after Gods.
Yes, after, I think a few months after, I've got a feeling. 91 the both were.
The scrolling in Gods isn't the silky smooth, but it's still a damn sight better. But this was you wouldn't have thought that this was a Bitmap Brothers game. It was pure quality.
Yeah, and the graphics on it as well. You play, I must admit, it's not a game that I've played through till the end. I've, played the first few levels, but the graphics are so samey. You've got kind of the blue-grey kind of bricks everywhere, and it actually looks quite a dull-looking game, compared to something like Gods. It's not very inspiring graphically.
Completely no kind of originality or imagination. As you say, so a lot of I think there's things like slugs or snails and that, and it was just, it was a poor game. So again, did you buy that? Did you get that for your Christmas or something?
No, luckily that was a pirate copy of that game, so didn't miss out. To reformatted the disc and put another one on instead. But it was, because I remember Bitmap Brothers Then, there were, I enjoyed Speedball 2. I did like that game, and Gods we had as well. And even though I think Gods suffered from something that also Magic Pockets did too, when you got too many characters on the screen, there's quite a bit of slowdown in the game.
Yeah,
eventually the system started jerking a bit. I remember that being quite a big problem in Magic Pockets, but then obviously the bitmaps came along with Chaos Engine that completely redeemed themselves in my eyes. So when I played that game, I was like, yeah, okay, the Bitmap Brothers are awesome again. But yeah, to me it was just kind of, they were, a bit like Sensible, really. They were like legends, weren't they? And when you got a game like that from that stable, it just really disappointed and just didn't live up to your expectations. I think that probably made the disappointment even more evident.
Yeah, because we were talking about it earlier on, with Sean Southern, etc., where you knew this game was programmed by this guy or this company or whatever it was, and you thought this is going to be great. And that was 100% the poor game. I think, they didn't. I don't think there was any. Like I said, for different reasons, I'm not a massive fan of like Speedball, etc. But there's no question that these were quality games. But Magic Pockets, it was like the poor third album, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They thought they could do no wrong, and you can't be perfect all the time, eh?
Yeah, that's it, mate. Yeah, and it's like, they did more good than bad on the Amiga, so I'll give them that. It's
definitely
not a game I'd like to revisit ever again, though. So we can shove that into the Desert Islands Room 101.
Listen, Dan, it's been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to have you on. Finally got you. I know we've kind of tied up a couple of times. I've seen you shows and that.
Yeah.
I do enjoy the Retro Hour podcast. I will put a link to it.
Thank you.
I feel like having you on my channel and giving you a shout out is like a corner shop telling people to go and buy to Amazon. But you're one of the legends. You've given so much back to the community, and keep doing what you're doing. And the same with Ravi and Joe. I enjoy listening to the podcast. I don't really listen to music in the car, but if I'm on a long journey, I'll usually put podcasts on. I do enjoy what you do. So thanks for coming on, Dan. And finally, I want to thank everybody for listening, and I hope everybody has a fantastic Christmas and a New Year, and we'll tie up probably next year, Dan, at some point, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Thanks again for having me on. Really enjoyed that. Merry Christmas.
Cheers, buddy.